Good morning, everyone. My name is John Martin, and I'm here with Allison Flero. We're both from Dialog Insight. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to get started fairly quickly on our webinar this morning about some strategic ideas on your contacts and using your contact points and tips and tricks on how to grow your audience and add contacts, to your database. We are recording today's webinar, so everybody will be sent a copy of this, following the presentation. We will answer any questions along the way, so if you have questions, feel free to raise them in the question box, and you will be receiving a recording by email. As well, we have a special 50-page PowerPoint that's just chock-a-block full of strategic ideas, and we'll be happy to share that with you at the end of the webinar as well. That's a sideways way of leading into an announcement that we're probably going to run a little bit long today, so we're going to move along quite quickly. But we apologize for sitting between you and your lunch, and we hope to conclude this, pretty quick. So, jumping right in, we'd like to start talking about using your contact points and, maybe understanding a little bit about the life cycle of the contacts that are entering and, joining your database. So taking a look at a contact life cycle from the perspective of the contact themselves, what typically happens is a contact or a consumer will identify a need or a want, and they will look for ways to, resolve that. So in the process, they do their research, maybe they enter into a comparison phase, and, the further down the line they go, the more likely they are to, join your database, to get information that contributes to their research, or perhaps back up what ultimately leads to a purchase decision and the use of the product. Today we're going to focus a little bit more on the left-hand side of that life cycle in the acquisition phase, but we'll touch on a few other points, here and there along the way. So where do people look for information? And as you might imagine, it varies a little bit from where they are in the life cycle or where they are in the process. So when they identify a need or a want, they're going to turn to things like the web, flyers, email, social media. What do others think? How have others solved this problem? But these are typical examples of where they might look for information. Of course, none of these are exclusive, but these are the ones that consumers or contacts tend to lean on today. You can see when they move into the research phase, they sort of pull out all the stops. They might visit something online. They might go to a store to see if something actually, physically fits their description or the space they have available for it. They'll look to flyers and, the other available sources of information to learn more about what they're going to, purchase. When they go to do their comparison, they start to narrow it down now. They have 2 or 3 solutions that they want to look at. They may turn to the web and read a couple examples, in terms of references. They may, again, check with stores or, even email, receive email on a given product or compare, with their networks on, what is the right purchase to make. And then, of course, they join in by making a purchase and move forward into that, use phase or experiment phase, and then turn around and hopefully, if we've all done our job right, they'll make recommendations and participate by email and social media to encourage their networks to use your products and solutions. So this is just an example of what communications or what media types people use along the way. This leads into the concept of multiple touch points. Now, like I said, you'll all get a copy of the presentation, so we're not going to go through these individually, but keep in mind as you run your business what touch points are available to you to pick up on your contacts, to add information about existing contacts, and to add new contacts to your database. So if you run a call center, for example, you can have emails verified or added to your database through the call center. A trade show where you're physically talking to somebody, maybe collecting business cards or having them enter a contest. Forms on your website, sign-up forms for newsletters. These are all things that we're going to look at from a strategic perspective. But what I want to really share is that there's a great deal of those touch points, and you should use as many of them as possible, especially if they're unique to your business or are going to prove successful for your business. So moving into the strategic side of things, we have Allison Flero. Allison is a account manager, a project manager, with Dialog Insight. She's helped many of our clients with some leading projects and is a wonderful source of ideas and strategies on how to make use of your contacts.
Thanks, John. So hi, everyone. Actually, we do have quite a few examples, but we did have to cut some of the content or else our presentation could have lasted 4 hours. So like I said, there's tons of examples out there, so it's possible that I might go a little more quickly, but please feel free to ask questions in the question panel and we can come back to them at the end of the presentation. So the first example is the classic newsletter subscription form that's on your website. We've put in place some tactics to drive people to your website. The contacts have reached the form, so now what do you do with them? Well, you want to create a relationship. That's why you put the form there. The form must be very simple because if you have a long form, we risk losing contacts that maybe don't want to give their phone number or who aren't interested in filling out an enormous amount of information. So you should make the form simple with first name, last name, email, and the type of subscription that they want. Another suggestion is to let the user know what they're going to receive. So you can see on the example that they have a screenshot of the newsletter, so the user can see what they're subscribing to when they fill out the form. So the objective of the form is very clear. It's to acquire a contact. The next step is to use different ways or tactics to get more information or more contacts. I have 3 examples on this page. The first is an ebook, which is an example where you have some content available and give the option to download the first chapter for free. To download it, the user clicks the button and it brings them to a form, and you send them a link to the download. This is an acquisition that can also serve to gather more information if the contact is already in your database. We'll talk about progressive forms a little bit later. The nice thing here is that you don't have to wait for the content to be 100% created before you share. Since the offer is actually by chapter, you can go incrementally, step by step. The second example in the middle is kind of the same. This is a company that does decorations, and they have a microsite that has home storage solutions. The microsite has content that can be sent by email. So in this case, it's a 52-week organization challenge. So, for example, on week 1, they focus on storage organization in the bathroom. The second week would be kitchen, and so on. What's interesting is that there's a weekly touch point where you send information to contacts based on what they've subscribed for. Now, 52 weeks is a long period, but depending on the content you have to offer, you could make a sequence that's right for you. The form for this, the form for this was just the email address. And then you can go get more information a little later on the client life cycle.
This is referred to as gated content. Basically, if you give people a reason to fill out your form beyond collecting the newsletter, they're more likely to fill out the form. So it's a way of adding value to your contacts and then collecting the information in exchange for that value. So think on what you might be able to provide to your users, through this methodology. There are lots of samples, newsletters, downloads, white papers, case studies, anything that helps them in that research phase or initial phase when they're looking at your company or your solutions.
So the last one on the page is the download form. There's a multitude of things that you can offer as a download. And the forms to download the items could be used to improve the info in your database. So case studies, white papers, infographics, an agenda for a conference. Often these are things we offer for free, but you'll have the user pass through a form to collect the contact or improve the info that you have about them. The nice thing about these forms is that if people are downloading the content, it gives you a better idea of the topic that they're interested in. So then you can personalize your messages with that info, or if a representative contacts the user later on, they have a better understanding of that person's interests. You're then using their behavior to increase the info that you have on them, not just asking them to fill out forms. Oops, I went backwards, sorry. So the next example is a webinar. So you all pass through our form to join this webinar. Now what's interesting is, yes, it allows us to capture information, but it also captures a little more. It's a good example to increase and improve the information. So when I click, it already shows my name, first name, last name, email, but there are a lot of things missing, like province, country, company. These are all elements that will be captured through this form, so we've increased the information we have on the contact through the form.
So the GoToMeeting or the GoToWebinar solution that we use at Dialog Insight provides for a registration process, and then following these webinars there's an opportunity to take that report and download it and update our database. In some cases that provides us with new users. Or I should say new contacts. In other cases, it's more likely that the contacts were already invited to the webinar, but filling out the registration form can provide us with new information. So something you may enter on a registration form is not necessarily something we asked for or a contact decided to fill out when they joined our database or our newsletter, you know, in the first place. So make use of all of these touch points because the information that they gather, you know, can be quite useful to you. Going forward, we're going to take a look at a couple other web strategies that can help you with this as well.
Okay, so if you just put a form on your page, someone may fill it out. But if you give them a reason to fill it out, something that makes them feel special or unique, like they're getting a benefit from it, they're more likely to give you information, especially if it means getting a discount or points to be used later. You can see our example here is from Metro. You can create an account to get exclusive information. It's really important when you add this kind of feature that you consider the value add for the contacts. So since they have to make the effort to create the account and log in, there should be a good benefit for them. In this case, we can ask for more information because people understand that they will need to give more, so you can personalize the offers. For example, this form has postal code as one of the questions because they want to send offers based on the location of the stores nearest the contact. Another example we see often is through a privilege club or points card. So the more we spend on a site, or the more we save according to the consumption that we do. Since you need to calculate the points, you need to associate it to a profile. So it's another way to acquire and increase information.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention a couple words on this. Metro, many other grocery stores, they use the Air Miles loyalty program. Metro, I think, actually has their own loyalty program in some jurisdictions as well. So the point I want to make is that the marketing platform can interact with virtually all of these different programs or help you create your own programs and use the platform to run them. So associating this information can help you tie point of sale data, you know, where somebody is, you know, logging purchases against a loyalty program, to tie that back to a contact profile and make use out of the information. And in that way we can, you know, help you intelligently make recommendations on what to buy next, send the right specials or flyer information to the people who are most likely to make use out of it, and overall, you know, increase the results of your marketing campaigns. So we have lots of ideas for you there. Reach out to your account managers at Dialog Insight and we'll have a discussion and help you get started with all of that.
Okay, so contests. This is the classic method to capture contacts. What's interesting with contests is that often people are used to giving more information. It's a strong method to capture new contacts, but it also works well to increase the information that you have on the contacts already in your database. City, province, postal code are often on the forms because often the prizes are handed out regionally. Another example is birth date. It's often the best way to get that information because people understand that to participate in a contest, you have to be the legal age. So people are often used to giving that information on a contest form where birth date is not something they want to offer when signing up for a newsletter.
And keep in mind when you run contests to keep them related to your business. So if you run a contest to give away an automobile, you're going to wind up with a wonderful list of people who need to get an automobile. But that's not going to do you a lot of good if you're in the coffee maker business. If you're in the coffee maker business, you might be better off giving away a month's worth of free coffee pods or another promotion that's more directly related to the solution that you're selling. So just try and tie your contests together so that you get the right people entering, and they actually are valuable to your business.
Right. And with Facebook contests, we capture new contacts because people who are on the Facebook page might not necessarily be in our database, but we also can capture more information on the contacts that are in our database. So the example shown here is a contest that one of our clothing stores did, where the people had to choose their favorite look by selecting a photo. It used to be popular to make the contest available only to people who liked your page on Facebook, but unfortunately this no longer is possible because Facebook removed the feature because people would only like the page for the duration of the contest and they truly weren't engaged. So an important element in contest is to consider if the participants are really interested in your brand or only interested because of the prize at the end. It's also important to specify the source in the database to be able to manage the contacts differently.
Yeah, and just a word on Facebook. Facebook, of course, has their own ways of, running contests. But think about Facebook as a way of propagating a contest that's running on your web page or a contest that you've built in the Dialog Insight platform. The idea then is that you can use Facebook to propagate that contest. So you have the link, finds its way to your Facebook community as well as your email contacts. And in that way, you can gather some of those people that are unique to Facebook, and as they fill out the contest form, that information will flow back to you. It gives you more control than Facebook or other social media sites. Those tend to be ever-changing landscapes, and like Allison said, the tools that are there, one day might not be there the next day. So use something that gives you the continuity and the consistency, but don't forget to use Facebook and other social media sites for propagating out your information. You'll reach a much wider audience.
Send to a friend. Here's an example of a form from another one of our clients that allowed you to share information or coupons to people in your network. The strength of this type of form is that their friends are often not part of our database or their database. So it's a way for us to show our brand and offer a link for them to get to subscribe. The person that they forward to is not automatically added to the database. It's just that it gives us the opportunity to communicate with them once and to possibly capture their info too. The other interesting thing is that if we receive content from someone in our network, the capacity of engagement is much more elevated because we have confidence in our network, more than we do if we just receive an email. Now remember, you should always give them a reason to forward to a friend.
Absolutely. In this case, there's a discount there. It's not out of the goodness of your heart that they're sending it. It's to take advantage of a discount or maybe a bit of information that you want to share with your friends. So the more you give people a reason to do something, the more likely they are to give you the behavior that you want.
So there are many different forms available in the platform. We can help you with requests from existing or new contacts for a demo, free sample, presentation, or simply a request for information. All of these make up the start of your lead generation strategy, and the automatic follow-up that the platform does as a welcome email or follow-up message lets the user perform other behaviors or give more information. Just don't forget to involve the rest of your team to make a well-rounded campaign to get and keep satisfied clients. Okay, so here's an example of an exclusive offer we did with Rona where people could share a 15% discount with their friends, and in order to receive the discount, the friend had to subscribe. Then the friends could print the coupon, and when they went into the store, the coupon indicated that it was because they were a friend and not because they were part of the database. So we could measure the real impact it had. Unfortunately, we can't share the results, but the rates were extremely good. It had a very high acquisition rate. Survey after purchase. Now, often we make a purchase where we're asked to complete a survey. It's a good technique to get new contacts because after the user completes the survey, they're often asked to subscribe to receive more information from your company. And these results allow you to know the level of interest that people have or what they think of your brand. With surveys, you can also ask demographic questions like, do they own or rent, what sector they live in, and their salary range, which can be used for segmenting your database later. Now, we did a survey for a client that makes windows, and once the installation is done, a few hours later, a survey is sent. The survey is based on the satisfaction of the team that installed the window, and then the information is sent to the call center to be reviewed. So this can improve the client's overall satisfaction and improve the profile in an important way. Another popular example is survey on your website, often in the form of a pop-up. You can ask a question with a true or false answer, or do you prefer number 1 or number 2? And then after the choice, you can give the option to send the global survey results by email. This is another way to capture information or new contacts.
Again, keeping the forms simple and clean, as a way of encouraging people to fill them out. It's real easy to click a yes button or a thank you button.
So an interceptor is another type of pop-up with a form to subscribe to a newsletter. It's important that only a minimum amount of information is asked on this form. When you're on a site and you're presented with a pop-up, you don't want to have to fill out 40 fields. The interceptor was very popular before, and then it went down in popularity a little bit because everyone started to do it. So now we're seeing these pop up again because we can put more rules on when they will be displayed, which makes them less aggressive. You can decide at which moment the pop-up will appear. You can define that it'll only appear after a certain amount of pages, or pop up before you leave the site, or even after X amount of minutes on the website. So these are all rules that we can define to make the interceptor less aggressive. Next is photo or video contests. This is where you ask people to upload a photo based on a theme. So what's interesting is that people who participate in these types of contests are often contacts that are very engaged with your brand. So it allows you to gather more information on the contacts that we already have, but it also lets us know that these contacts are probably more interested in your brand than others. Just remember that it's always important to give a prize that is related to your brand. So if you're in retail, offer something that you sell in your store. Or if you're a travel agency, offer a trip or a discount towards a trip.
And now we're going to move a little bit beyond the web into human interactions and touch points you can leverage with your contacts. So call centers, many businesses have call centers, and people that are talking to your clients either on to deliver an outgoing message or perhaps take service calls or other new client interests. Don't neglect those as an opportunity to collect information. The call centers can have available to them a form that can directly enter those contacts or correct the information on those contacts in your database, or the call center could fill out a special spreadsheet that could be dropped off with marketing and imported into the database later. And in this way, you're getting up-to-date information. If somebody's talking to a call center and there's a reason to give them an email to exchange a bit of information, it's an excellent way to collect that information. Don't forget to collect it. Don't forget to make use of it, and train your people, to help you collect that. Another opportunity is with trade shows. And when you go to a trade show, you know, I guess the old school method would be to have a fishbowl contest and collect business cards, or perhaps a booth-specific scanner that lets you, you know, pick up on information. I've even seen OCR solutions where cards are automatically scanned, you know, that way. But today, many trade shows, virtually all trade shows, offer a method to scan a badge. And when you can scan a badge, you'll pick up the demographics associated with how people registered for the trade show. And yes, that's not always accurate, but more often than not, those people have titles, they have names, they have businesses, and you can collect a lot of information that's not obvious from, you know, their appearance when they come by their booth in casual clothes. So if you run, if you have a reason to, if you give them a reason to let you scan their badge, they're interested in your products, they want more information, or they're interested in receiving something following the show. Maybe they're interested in your contest, because there's lots of people that have trade show contests. Just remember to keep your reason for scanning their badge related to the business and the actions that you want to encourage, so that you're getting qualified people, or you're more likely to get qualified people that are interested in your solution, as opposed to people that are interested in the iPad you're trying to give away. And in that way, you can put them into the right spot in your database, and you can, of course, you know, start the marketing process by sending them information that way, whatever you've promised. In a lot of cases, you can measure the ROI of a trade show by creating a landing page, you know, associated with that trade show. So it's unique to the links that you present, and you can see what kind of business you got as a result of your trade show investment. And of course, the sales reps can, you know, do their follow-up. Trade shows are often a business-to-business, you know, solution. So the personal sales rep that's there, don't forget to have them follow up on the trade show leads. It's, you know, it's not just a marketing responsibility. And that leads me into the next one. If you have calling representatives, and today that can mean a lot of different things. It can mean people that are focused on outbound work via email or telephone, or in a lot of cases, there's still people that go out and visit clients day to day. When you visit your primary contact, you may find half a dozen or more influencers in that prospective client. And don't forget to pick up on their information. People are still exchanging business cards in that environment. Trust me, I know. And take those, make sure they get entered into your database, and make sure they get entered into the proper follow-up, method, so that you can do you keep your CRM up to date, and you can you know, present the right information to your client and build on that relationship.
Okay, so the next example is email receipts. Now, receipt by email is something that we see more often now. This is where you ask for the email address at the touch point of, at the point of purchase, to be able to send the receipt to the contact. Now, it's easy, and once the person has exited the store, they receive their receipt within minutes. It's also the perfect time to ask people to subscribe to your newsletter. Like you can see at the right in the example, on the receipt. Remember that just because you're asking for their email address to send them the receipt, it doesn't mean you can automatically subscribe them to your newsletter, but it does produce the opportunity to go and ask for their consent. Now, print receipts can also work if sending the receipt by email doesn't work for you. This one is very simple. You just have to add a link to a survey at the bottom of the receipt, and then on the survey, you can ask for consent to send them messages. Remember that whether you're sending them to a survey or an opt-in form, there has to be a benefit for the user to go complete the survey or form. But if there is an interest, then it's a good way to collect contacts. Another way is to use product registration, packaging, and the guarantee. These are all ways to add contacts in your database or to increase the information you have on them. So profit from these occasions to capture the information. Okay, mobility. So for this example, The Quebec Tourism Office had people who tour around the city with tablets, and they capture the tourists by asking them about their interests. Based on that, they supply attractions and interest points that are sent live by email to the person so they can have the reference while they finish their visit. So this is a good way to profit from a human contact point to capture information. What's interesting here is that they're really focusing on the interests of the tourist. In-source survey is kind of the same thing. A person with a tablet walks around the store and asks shoppers some questions. So there are so many examples we could keep going, but since we're almost out of time, we'll end with some general advice on what to think about when you're making forms. All right. In this next example, we're looking at Ricardo's email preference form. He presents a few options because he has different communications. If what you're sending is more promotional, the idea is to have a form in which you ask the desired frequency, like in this case where I can select to receive 1 or 2 emails per week, 3 to 5 emails per week. Giving these options also tends to reduce the amount of opt-outs because the contact can define their preferences. So autocomplete is something you see with Google. You start to enter your text and a drop-down menu appears with more choices related to what you started typing. It's super interesting for people because it will help them a lot when they're filling out the form. It's great for when you have to enter the name of a road, for example. Obviously, if we need to enter province or city, a drop-down menu would be easier to work with than autocomplete. Another point is it allows you to have the same information for all contacts. So for example, Beaudry Road, if someone makes a spelling mistake, it will be captured in all kinds of ways in your database, where if you use the autocomplete, you're ensuring that the content is valid.
Consistent and valid. Absolutely.
Now, often with forms we use radio buttons with text, but here's an example of a form that is asking about the contact's style preference. So it uses images so you can quickly see what style you'll like, and it's a much better experience for the user to see what he likes, and then he can click. Also, it doesn't take much extra time to program. It might be longer to find the images, but the integration time isn't that different.
Picture says 1,000 words, and clicking on the right picture or the right illustration, you can do the translation behind the scenes to better understand your contact's interest.
So progressive forms. In this example, after the purchase was complete, they presented another form to ask for gender and age, to be able to send more personalized information. In this case, the form was to purchase a ticket for a show, so they probably wanted to send info for upcoming shows that would be of interest to the user. This is a progressive form, meaning that according to the step where the person is, you ask them the minimum amount of information that you need, and then in the different steps you can ask for more information.
Yeah, and the automation can help send reminders to that as well. So if somebody's started a progressive strategy or started a progressive process with you, then if they don't complete the next step within an allotted amount of time, let's say a week, then you can have a reminder with a link sent and encourage them to, continue to fill out the form. So the system can look after that automatically with some automations, some easy automations in place.
Now here's an example that a lot of people use. It's to show people that it's simple to subscribe. It's just asking for email address and then click on subscribe. It could be a pre-subscription, and even if there's another form at the next step that is asking for more information, if the contact doesn't complete that form, you could always send them an email later saying, hey, by the way, you didn't complete your profile. Now you can even add an incentive. I know we do that with one of our clients where we send a message 2 hours after, 24 hours after, and at each step there's an incentive like a coupon with a discount that gets bigger at each step to try and get them to complete the profile. This is a good way to capture the interest. If they gave you their email address, then normally they're going to go ahead and complete their profile. Facebook Connect is a single sign-on application which allows users to interact with other websites through their Facebook account. So instead of creating an account with a password, they can use their Facebook connection. Basically, if the user isn't already connected, they have to connect to Facebook, and then at that moment you have access to information, and the user gives their okay so that you can get the information. I know for Facebook you can only get the basic information like coordinates, but you could go get their interest among other things. Of course, you only take the minimum of what you need at first.
Yeah, remember the goal here is to keep it easy for the users. So if the simpler the information that is to enter, even if it's picking up information they've already entered in another source like Facebook, it keeps it very simple. If the process is simple, then you're more likely to get the contacts you need.
And on all of your forms, just like all of your pages, there should be options to share on social media so people can promote your content to their network.
Remember all the touch points you can. So party on, people. Let's talk a little bit about some of the best practices. As you go through these processes or these strategies or others that you may think of, remember to keep your design clean and simple. If you don't have very many fields for people to answer, they're more likely to fill them up. Remember your value proposition. What's in it for the contact? You know, why should they work with you? Why should they fill out your form? In the early days, they may simply be looking for information and want to receive it by email. And then it's up to you to make that information compelling enough and entertaining enough, you know, that they'll stay with you, you know, for a long time. Action words on a button. I mean, you can equate those in the platform, you know, behind the scenes, but, you know, keep the buttons simple to click on.
And clear to what the actual action is, not just submit. If you want them to download a white paper, the button should say, download your white paper. Good
point. I was also going to make a parallel here that perhaps we should build a slide to support this, but if you're asking for a lot of information, then the value you offer in return should be high. If you're asking for a little bit of information, you maybe don't have to answer, you know, quite as much or offer quite as much in order to get people to fulfill that. And at every step along the way, that's going to change just a little bit. So when you first gather a contact, they may be interested in your solution, but later when you want them to attend your webinar, you may have to, you know, make a more compelling offer to get them to sit through your webinar or offer more value. So visual support, you know, on your forms and your slides for images and such, input hints, you know, what format you want to receive the data in. We can help you with validating the data. So talk to your account managers, and we'll work with we'll work with you on that. I'm sorry, and discounts or even surprise value. You know, don't be afraid to offer something, you know, afterwards that maybe you didn't promise. And in doing that, you know, your contacts may well turn to others and say, hey, this is a good company. They gave me a 10% discount that I wasn't expecting. You should register too, and you can see if you can take advantage of this value. So just keep it in mind to keep things simple, and remember to reward your contacts for joining up and you know, potentially setting the stage to work with you. And party on. Do we have any questions, Allison?
Yes, we have one question about Intercept. So doesn't the pop-up frustrate users because it interrupts their user experience?
Pop-ups can indeed be frustrating, and I think Allison touched on this when we were talking about them. In the early days, they were kind of unique, and we got a very lot of positive response from them. As they became more and more popular, of course, they become more and more annoying. So remember to keep your pop-ups, if you decide to use them, as charming as possible. In our platform, you can configure pop-ups to show up, say, 1 in 5 times when somebody visits your website. So you don't present a pop-up every time. You present them, you know, only under certain conditions. The other thing we can help you with pop-ups and interceptors is only if a contact meets a certain criteria. So you can only present a pop-up if the contact is not in your database. And in this way, we can help you acquire more contacts while you don't annoy the contacts you already have. Similar, if there's a missing bit of information you want to collect via a pop-up, location, for example, then you can, request that in a pop-up only to the people who are missing that field, in your contact database. So if you remember to keep your pop-ups charming and as least intrusive as possible, and you keep them simple in terms of not asking too much information on a pop-up, then I think they're still a very valid strategy to use to round out your database. I hope that answers your question, but if it doesn't, feel free to reach out to your account manager and we'll help you with that more specifically. So I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm sorry we went a few minutes longer than we promised we would, but I hope you all enjoyed the talk and look forward to receiving the materials and information. And if you think of other strategies or you want to expand on these for your business, just reach out to your account manager or Allison and I, and we're happy to point you in the right direction. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.